Hello, everybody. It's Mitch here with Josh, and we are pulling a Wu-Tang Clan slash Fabulous Freebirds rule here and just using two of us, and that's what you're getting. But we're making up for it by having the weekend host on 590 The Fan in St. Louis and host of Water Rush podcast with Road Warrior Animal, Joe Roderick. Joe, how's it going?
What's going on, guys? How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on with us. Joe is down in Atlanta right now because he's covering the Cardinals and down there for Game 5, which is happening Wednesday night. What's the feelings on Cardinals taking that win?
I'll tell you what, man. I was at games 3 and games 4 in St. Louis, and game 3, man, that sucked. Carlos Martinez came in the ninth and blew the save for that, and you ruined a perfectly good Adam Wainwright outing. And then yesterday was a team that just fought, and I feel like there were some mistakes made from the manager, from Mike Schilt, the way that he managed the bullpen in the game. But the bullpen they came out and they did their job. I think that the way he went about it was wrong, and I think he went to them a little too late. But the offense came out big in the eighth and in the eighth inning, and then got the run home in the 10th. But after the game, talking with Dakota Hudson, who started Game 4, and the Cardinals second baseman Colton Wong, you mentioned to them the fact that Jack Flaherty's pitching on Wednesday's Game 5, and their eyes just lit up knowing that they have, he was the best pitcher in all of baseball in the second half of the season, and they know that he's throwing for them. So they had a little sparkle in their eye knowing that they had him on their side for Wednesday night.
And you mentioned Game 4, and the late offense came a lot from Yachty. Is that statue going to be unveiled when they get back, win or lose?
Right, that's been kind of the joke the past few days now, that they're going to put that statue up for him here real soon, and one day he's going to get one. He's going to finish his career as a Cardinal. He's not going anywhere else after he decides to hang it up when this contract's up, or whenever it is he decides that he's done playing. And he's, it's there. There's a lot of Cardinal statues outside of the stadium, and then there's the big Stan Musial statue. You kind of wonder where Yachty's is going to be size-wise, but he's absolutely going to have one. And it's not so much the hitting too. I mean, yeah, he had the big hits. Yeah, he drove in Goldschmidt. He had the sac fly. But when you think about the game, and what were there, 6-7 pitchers used by the Cardinals in that game, that he called the pitches for each and every one of those. Some of those guys, you have some real young pitchers, some rookie pitchers out there, and he's able to navigate, he's able to control each and every one of them. And I mean, God, just the fact that he has to emotionally control Carlos Martinez is a big enough job in itself. But he's able to do that game in and game out at his age, and the amount of innings that he's caught over the years and how much he's been beaten up over the years. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and there's something to say, especially in today's day and age of athlete, him playing all of those years for one team. Something special with that there.
Oh, yeah, and in today's game, yeah, absolutely. You look at you look at teams all over baseball. I mean, Derek Jeter played for the same team his entire career. Mo Rivera played the same team his entire career. And you kind of start to look around baseball and you wonder who else there is that's out there that you can say that about, and or who you might be able to say that about when it's all said and done. And you look at a guy right now like Mike Trout. He signed that big deal with the Angels, and you would imagine that he's going to end his career with them. But if the Angels keep not making the postseason and keep wasting his talents, you wonder at some point if he's going to leave. And it's so odd to think about right now, but when you look at a guy like Yachty and you realize that position, I mean, think about how easy would it have been at some point to just kind of send him on his way to another team and go and get a young catcher. But the fact that he's able to stay in there year in and year out, he's your 5-6 hitter, and he's able to catch as much as he does. It's it really is a testament to how, good of shape he keeps himself in, and just the fact that he stays so, such an important part for this team offensively to keep that glove back there behind home plate, which is really needed.
Josh, you got anything?
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on Mike Matheny as a manager, as there's rumblings around Kansas City that Mike Matheny could be the next general manager for the Royals.
Oh, I mean, did they not see what he did here in St. Louis? I mean, I look if you actually paid attention to the way that he handled players, to the way that he handled any kind of adversity, and there's no way that he should ever get a job ever again. But the fact that he was handed such a good team with such talented players, and they, won so many games. You look at that win-loss record, and it's just, the Royals, they got their World Series, and it's cute and all that, they finally did, but they can go back to being irrelevant in baseball and, have all these losing seasons. And if they want to do that for another 2-3 seasons with Mike Matheny as their manager, they can go do that. I mean, that's fine, whatever. They'll learn, and after that, I imagine that Mike Matheny will never get a managerial job again.
He wouldn't be the first we put into retirement over here.
Yeah, it's not going to go well. It's really not.
If you want, we mentioned you're also host of What a Rush podcast with Road Warrior Animal. Can you fill our audience maybe a little bit in what that goes on there, and then how also you got hooked up with him?
So first off, I'm a big wrestling fan. Always have been since I was preteen. Big Undertaker fan. Love the Monday Night Wars. I'm 34 years old, and at a time, so this is about 2+ years ago, my work at the radio station kind of dwindled a little bit. I was looking for more stuff to do. And then I get a phone call from one of the producers at the radio station who was like, "Hey, I just talked to a guy here that represents Road Warrior Animal, WWE Hall of Famer. And he listens to your stuff here. He's local, and he wanted to know if you'd be interested in doing a podcast with him." And as you guys are well aware, wrestling podcasts are huge and have been huge since about 2016. I mean, there was a huge boom for them. And I thought, yes, absolutely. I want to do that. I want to be on board with that. So I set up a meeting, met Animal. We talked about what we wanted the podcast to be. And I'm sure you guys have run into this. The ideas that you had at the beginning don't end up being some of the ideas that you want or that you end up running with in the end. So there's been a lot of changes over it. I think this November is going to be or December. I have to look at the actual date that we started. It's going to be our 2-year anniversary of doing the What a Rush podcast. And at first, we did a lot of interviews. We'd interview a lot of guys that he worked with back in the day. So if I'm 34 years old. I feel like I am just a few years too young to really appreciate what the Road Warriors were to wrestling. But over the past 2+ years, I've read a lot and I've watched a lot to know what it means. And I've talked to a lot of listeners that I know how important, his wrestling was to them over their, whether it be their childhood or into their, adult years. And it's really cool to hear some of the stories that he has. So it went from being a lot of interviews to being now it's a lot of current wrestling talk. And in today's wrestling world, you just saw the debut of AEW wrestling on TNT. You saw the debut of WWE SmackDown on Fox, on actual Fox, not Fox Sports 1, not your, Fox Sports regional. They're on the actual Fox station now on Friday nights, and that's a big deal. I mean, 3.8 million viewers for week 1. This is probably the biggest, most important time to be a wrestling fan in the history of sports entertainment. So we break down a lot of what's going on there. We kind of tie it back into the stuff he did in the 80s and 90s. And we'll talk a lot, we'll we'll bring up some memories along the way too. And, instead of doing, at the beginning, we were doing 2 3-hour shows, we realized that shorter is much better. And doing about a 30, 45-minute show will definitely keep the audience entertained a lot more than dragging it on. So it's been great working with him, working with the Creative Control Network on this. And it's been a really, really fun ride for a wrestling fan like myself to get to do and see a lot of cool stuff on top of the sports radio job.
Yeah, and for our audience that isn't aware of who he is the father of James Laurinaitis, former Ohio State linebacker, and Rams and Saints, I believe, is who he kind of finished up there in the NFL. So,
yeah, that's how we got hooked up, because once James was drafted by the St. Louis Rams, Joe Laurinaitis, Animal, he moved his whole family down to St. Louis so they can go watch James play every week down at the Dome, and he has since just stayed here. So through that, I've built a pretty nice relationship with James as well. I'll see James at the Super Bowl every year, and he'll always come up to me and ask me how his dad's doing, because he's based out of Columbus, Ohio now, so he sees his dad only a couple times a year, where I have to, sometimes regretfully have to talk to his dad, every week. So it's, we have a fun connection there as far as that, which, I covered James throughout most of his career here in St. Louis, so now having that connection with him after he's done playing is pretty neat.
I'll get another one in here and let Josh go back at it. But you brought up the St. Louis Rams. How is St. Louis doing now that the Rams are no longer there?
Hey, we got ourselves an XFL team coming, so go Battlehawks. That's all we care about. Caw, go the Battlehawks, and get that big XFL draft coming up next week. I mean, it's exciting times here in St. Louis for that, but it's so weird because I get this question a lot. You have so many different segments of fans now when it comes to NFL football, because you have older fans that this is the second team they've lost. They lost the St. Louis Cardinals to Arizona. Now they lost the St. Louis Rams. There's some people in town that once the Cardinals left, they just, they were done with the NFL then. But you have a lot of people that, the Rams were bad. They were a bad football team for 10 years. So I think a lot of people were already kind of sour on them to begin with. So you do have your people that swore off the NFL. You have your people that might be Packers or Bears or Chiefs or Colts fans, and they went their own separate way. And you still have people that are bitter towards the Rams. You still have people that just, they hate watch the NFL. Where me, I was a Peyton Manning fan, and I covered the Rams. Peyton Manning retired the same year the Rams left. So I don't have a favorite team. I don't have a team that I follow. I have one fantasy football team, and that is my kind of in on the NFL each and every year. And I make sure I keep that to keep up with that. And I have an NFL show every Sunday for 20 weeks during the NFL season on 590 The Fan in St. Louis. So we talk a lot of NFL. I've been to the last 8 Super Bowls. Miami will be number 9. And we go there and we talk to people every year. And, the greatest show on turf still means something to folks in St. Louis. They still love hearing from Kurt Warner and Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt and Orlando Pace and all of the other guys that are at the Super Bowl every year making their rounds and talking, because what's cool to them is all of those former players, they still love St. Louis so much. And there's guys that still live in St. Louis because of how much they love the city. And they feel for the fans that came out there and cheered them on every week that they can't do that anymore. So it's a weird spot to be in, and I think just each individual person kind of handles it their own way.
Great. And we had a question sent in I wanted to ask you on being from St. Louis and covering the Cardinals. What is your favorite Cardinal moment in all of their history?
It's David Freese Game 6. Without a doubt, it's David Freese Game 6. I mean, I wasn't there at the stadium for that game, but I can still just remember sitting there when it happened. You're 2 strikes, 2 outs, down 1 run, bottom of the ninth, thinking that it's just completely over and done with. And for them to come back not once, but twice, because a lot of people forget when you think back to that, World Series moments, that Josh Hamilton hit a home run after an extra innings, and the Cardinals had to come back and tie the game again, and did so with Lance Berkman. That then David Freese hits the walk-off home run. I mean, that memory is just going to always and forever stick with me. And what's really, we talked at the beginning about how the Cardinal fans feel about Game 5. It's one of those where I will remember after Game 6, Ozzie Smith was on the radio the next morning, and Ozzie Smith said the Cardinals won the World Series last night. Like, they didn't win their 4th game, but knowing that game happened and knowing that Chris Carpenter was on the mound for Game 7, you knew the series was over. You knew there was no way the Cardinals were going to lose that game with Chris Carpenter on the mound. And that's the same feeling that you get with this game tomorrow, knowing that you have to go into the game thinking that there is no way the Cardinals will lose with Jack Flaherty on the mound.
So something we kind of do here, put you on the spot a little bit. Kind of like the Mount Rushmore, we do a Mount Sportsman. So instead of the best, it's our favorite. So it allows you to be a little bit different rather than having the same 4 or 5 people up there. But do you have a Mount Sportsman? So your 4 favorite Cardinals?
Ooh, 4 favorite can I call it audible and go other players with that too?
Sure. Yeah.
Because I grew up on the south side of Chicago and moved down to St. Louis when I was 12.
Okay.
I have a 6-year-old son who I fought to name Frank Thomas Roderick. I wanted to name that's what I wanted his name to be. But I was overruled a lot on that one. So, far and away, like, he is my favorite, player of all time. And then when you look at, if you're just talking Cardinals, Albert Pujols, getting to watch his good years was great. It really was. It was so much fun to get to watch that and cover that. And man, getting to see Adam Wainwright too throughout his entire career, which, we talked about guys that stay with one team their whole career. That's one, can you count him? He was drafted by the Braves, but came up through the Cardinals system. That's one of those, it's how do you want to handle that? And then if I'm going my favorite Cardinals, I'm going Matt Adams, who now plays with the Washington Nationals, just because Matt and I ended up having a nice relationship when he was here, all based on wrestling. I saw him at a pay-per-view I was at in St. Louis. He was sitting ringside with a few other players. After they played a game, they went down and they sat ringside at a pay-per-view in St. Louis. And the next day I was in the locker room. I asked him about it, and he ended up being a huge wrestling fan to the point where if I talked baseball to him, he wanted nothing to do with me. If I asked him what he thought about an upcoming pay-per-view or what happened on Monday Night Raw, he would talk to me for 10 minutes, and to the point where they were like, Matt, you got to come out to the field now. So, we ended up, I had him on the show a few times just to talk wrestling, and with the promise that I wasn't going to bring up baseball. So that's always going to stick with me too.
Nice. Josh, you got anything else?
No, I think those are all the questions I had.
All right. Joe, thank you for your time. If you can let our listeners know where they can find you. We do have some people. I know I talked to my brother-in-law, let him know you're coming on. He lives out there in St. Louis and enjoys your show out there. But if they're not in the St. Louis area, where can they follow you or listen to you?
So the radio station is 590 The Fan, KFNS. So you search that, you should have no problem finding me. Mostly on the weekends right now. Also do some stuff on Thursday nights with another guy's show. But on social media, you can just search Joe Roderick, and you can find me there and find all of the if you're a wrestling fan, find all the wrestling stuff there as well. Because not only do I work with Animal on the What a Rush podcast, I also work with a local indie wrestling company called Glory Pro Wrestling. So you can find my stuff there. I wear a lot of hats in this town, doing a lot of different jobs, and it a lot of times becomes a 7-day-a-week gig.
Nice to hear. Again, thank you for your time, and good luck with the Game 5 tomorrow night.
Thank you very much, guys. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.